How's it going, everybody?
You know who it is.
My name is Sunwoo, and in today's video I want to talk about this, the Arturia AUDIOFUSE 16 rig. It's a long name, it's a cool device, but before we talk about it, let's have a little story time. If you are like me, many of you guys that are wanting to get into music production, have a little bedroom studio.
Music producer, isn't he?
Probably start something like this. First of all, you're gonna watch YouTube and you're gonna find your favorite synth YouTuber shill playing an instrument that you find interesting.
Look at my synth.
So you end up with something like this, or maybe even something like this. And then once you hit the buy button,
Dopamine now.
you finally get the package and you play around with the instrument, create your first sequences, make a few presets, or even write a finished song.
Finish a song. Yeah, maybe this year.
And what you might do then is you actually go back to your favorite synth YouTuber shill's video, go down to the comment section and write,
But how
do I record this into my computer? And then you probably get a recommendation for a simple 2-channel
interface.
1 channel for the left, 1 channel for the right. And that's going to be enough to record your first instrument to the computer. But if you are anything like me, the gear addict that I am, you're going to buy another synth, another sampler, another workstation, another groove box, and you're going to amass a lot of gear in your studio. And then you'll notice, oh, I need more channels for my interface.
I want more.
And this is the point where the Arturia AUDIOFUSE 16 rig comes in. As you can see, it's actually really dirty. I left this on purpose so you can see this has been the heart of my setup, and you've heard it in my videos throughout the past 4 months. If my audio quality today through the microphone is worse, that's because I'm not using this one, but using a cheaper interface instead, because I gotta show this to you. Anyway, let's get to the functionality.
Oh, that's what I came here for.
On the back side of the unit, we have 16 line inputs. That means 16 mono channels can be recorded at the same time using these. So if you want to hook up your synthesizers.
That thing has 16 sockets.
In addition to that, we have 2 microphone inputs on the front, which are super clean, super clear, and yeah, don't introduce a lot of noise to your signal, and I've been really enjoying using these. These inputs are marked 1 and 2. That means if I am recording microphones through these, they will replace the line inputs 1 and 2 on the back. Furthermore, we've got a small TRS jack input here, which again, if we use this one, we will replace inputs 3 and 4 on the back. And if for any reason these inputs weren't enough for you,
Not enough!
No, it's not enough.
so maybe you need more than 2 microphones, or you have more than 16 synthesizers that you want to hook up to this, you can expand this interface via the ADAT inputs and add 16 more channels of audio to this, so you can have a total of 32 audio inputs. And then we get to the audio outputs, which are here. Output 1 and 2 normally would go to your monitor speakers, and we've got 8 more audio outputs here, which you can use for anything you want. Basically, you can route any of your inputs to these outputs, for example, sending them to effects unit, or you record your tracks into the DAW, and maybe once you have these tracks recorded, you actually want to mix them through an analog console, so you can send them back out into your analog console and then use the analog EQs and compressors and whatnot to affect these tracks and send them back into some inputs if you like.
You can do whatever you want.
Furthermore, we have these 2 outputs on the front, and they get the same signal as outputs 3 and 4 on the back. And these are very useful in case you have the AUDIOFUSE racked up and it is difficult to get to the back of the unit.
I can't do it.
But you quickly want to send out some tracks from the DAW, for example, to an effects unit. You can just hook this effects unit up to the front and you don't have the hassle of having to access the back of this unit. Then we got the headphones outputs, 1 large jack, 1 mini jack. Very useful to have, of course. And let's quickly go over the other stuff that's on here. I personally haven't used the USB jacks yet, but I think they could be very useful. So these are additional USB inputs that then will also be sent to your computer, at least I believe this one is, or MIDI devices that you quickly want to merge with the MIDI inputs on the back. Again, I haven't used that, I can't completely confirm it, but probably LOOPBACK can tell you more about this. And yes, I'm aware I'm skimming over these a little bit, but the point is that...
Wow. Well, it's nice to have options.
That's probably the most important point about this interface. It has such a great combination of features that I think it could be the one main brain, main center of your setup for such a long time, because whenever you need it, it's there.
I love that little shoe.
Here we've got another MIDI hub input. Then we've got our USB-C connection to the computer. They provide two different cables for this, so one USB-C to USB-C as well as a USB-C to USB-A cable. Then we've got the power plug, which can be twisted on there so it's securely connected and can't be just ripped out. It's a small plug, which might be one negative point. I usually like devices that have built-in power supplies, so you have these chunky power connectors on there. But since this one can be screwed on, I don't think it's a big problem. Also, where would you fit a large socket on here? This thing is already filled with plugs, or sockets rather. Yeah, then we've got MIDI input via 5-pin connector and an out and a through. And then we have a clock output, which personally I also haven't used yet, but I guess you could clock your Korg Walkers or your old school drum machines or your pocket operators from this. So
it's like you can do anything.
And I don't know who uses these, probably professionals, which I am not.
Not professional.
Yeah, that's it for the ins and outs. It's a pretty hefty unit. It feels like quality. It's a metal build. So there are no concerns about build quality in my opinion. And now let's hook this up to electricity and to the computer and discuss what this thing can do internally in terms of routing and mixing. Because not only is this an audio interface, but it is also a fully fledged mixer.
You plug this into the port.
This is the button here. You can see how long it takes to power up.
And powering up.
And it'll take a second until it's actually recognized by the computer. But yeah, it doesn't take too long. And here it is. One thing I quickly want to mention, and again, something that I personally haven't used, but most of the things that I'm going to show you, I think, are accessible from the front panel. So you can use this away from your computer as an independent mixer. So you can have it hooked up to your gear, take your laptop away, and this will still function and still be able to get your tracks in and out and mix them with one another. And for all you guys out there that are complaining about me not taking the screen protector off, maybe, why not? We'll do it now. The moment has come. Wow. Nice and clean. All right, let's have a look at the app which shows us the internals of this a little better.
Going internal.
This is what you're greeted with when you open the AUDIOFUSE control center. You've got your inputs and outputs here. The analog inputs here, as you can see right there, ADAT inputs, which I don't have, and outputs, and the analog outputs. You can name your inputs. Then the other controls are your gain meter. You obviously got your level meter right here, which I should show you off by plugging something in there. So we've got the trusty OP1 field here, which has a mini TRS output. And again, conveniently, I can just hook that up to the mini TRS input on the front here.
How convenient.
Let's play something. And we cannot hear it yet, or rather we cannot see it on screen yet. You won't be able to hear anything. And that is because analog inputs 3 and 4 right now are using the inputs on the rear of the machine. We can easily switch that here with this button, and you can see now the input of the OP1 is received. We can change the gain, turn it up if we want. We can also change phase inversion if we are having phase issues. And then the last option here on the channel strip is the coupling or decoupling of channels, meaning do I want to use channels 3 and 4 as a stereo pair, or do I want them as separate mono channels? I can't do this right now because I am using the front input, which assumes that you are using a stereo pair.
It's just not possible.
But if I choose the rear inputs, I can couple and decouple them. Here on the analog outputs, we have our monitor channel, meaning what is going to our main speakers. We can adjust the volume here. We can also adjust the volume on the big knob on the unit itself. So you see the volume changes without me clicking anything. We can quickly mute our main speakers, which again, we can also do on the main unit itself, as well as a dim speaker button, which makes the signal a little bit more quiet. So you can A/B between loud signal and quiet signal, which is good for mixing. We also have a mono option, which sums our signal to a mono signal, which can show us if we are having any phasing issues or something like that. It's all very useful to have this. And then we come to the phones channel, so our headphones. You'll see that I cannot change the volume on the headphones from the app itself. I got to do that from this knob. Furthermore, you can adjust the headphone output level depending on the type of headphone you have down here as well. You've got channels also for all the other analog outputs that I've shown you before. So that means the front outputs as well as the rear side line level outputs. For analog output 3 and 4, all these options here are to send your signal to the front outputs, and line means you are using the backside output. And as you may be able to hear if I take my microphone, you will actually hear a physical click in the unit itself. All the other outputs are more simplified.
Simple.
They can be either mono outputs or stereo outputs, so you have a combined volume control for both left and right channels, or if they're mono channels, of course, they are separate. Then we get to the loopback section. In case you don't know what loopback means, it means getting the audio that is produced in the computer, sending it to the audio interface, and then being able to send that back into the computer to record it on a specific channel.
We go out and back in.
Which can be useful, for example, if you are producing in your DAW, but at the same time you want to record this production process, for example, for a video. However, I will say the loopback function in the AudioFuse was one of the more underwhelming things about it, but we'll get to that after we discuss the mixer and the routing matrix.
Patience.
This is the input-output tab, and if we click up here, we get to the mixer section. We've got a main mix. That means the mix that is going to my main speakers, as well as a Q mix, which most likely would be the thing that's going to our headphones. Why would we do this? Well, for example, if you have your main mixer speakers within your recording environment, like I do right now, I've got my microphone sitting right here and my speakers right there. I don't want my speakers to send out the microphone signal because I would get feedback. So I only want to hear my microphone on my headphones and not on the speakers. So I would turn down my microphone, which in this case isn't going in here, but I would turn down my microphone on the main speaker signal, but turn it up on the headphones. Now in this mixer setting here, I can add channels by clicking plus minus channels. So I can add channels to my main mix that I want to include in the mix and here in my mix. So I could also decide to get rid of most of the channels. And now my mixer is only showing input number 1 and a USB 1 and 2 input, which I can also get rid of. So now it's only showing the microphone. This easily allows me to decide what exactly I'm hearing on my main speakers and what exactly I am hearing on my headphones. I probably should quickly stop here and say that for a beginner new to music production, this might seem...
It's overkill.
If you acquire a few more synths, you will encounter one or more of these features here, and you will probably wish for something that could do these things.
Trust me.
Yeah, I showed you how to add and remove different channels to your mixer section. Now, again, this is where one of the downsides comes in. I can add these analog inputs here to my Q mixer, for example, channel 1 on or off. And what I don't like about this here is that I don't get the name of my inputs. So I made a point of calling this input number 1 not mic. However, when I select the inputs that I want to include in my mixer, it is just called channel 1. So here's something I would wish for a quick update in terms of this interface.
Any update yet?
So another thing you can do within this mixer section is send different signals to your auxiliary sends. So if I turn up aux 1 and 2 over here, you will see that we are getting a level over here now. If I turn it down, there's no level going on. So we can send each of the channels at different volumes to our auxiliary sends. We can decide if we want them pre-fader or post-fader. Now, for now, nothing is happening here, but let's say I take this signal off my main mix. So right now I wouldn't hear it through my speakers. And it seems like it's still being sent to the aux mix. But if I click this, now nothing is coming to the aux mix, and that's because this fader is down, and it will take the signal after this fader. If I click pre, it will take the signal before the fader and send that to the aux mix. Hope this makes sense. That's how an aux mix works. We can also mute the aux mix. We can mute channels directly. We can solo them. We can do all the usual things a mixer is supposed to do.
It makes perfect sense.
We can also separate the aux channels into mono aux channels or combine them into stereo auxes. Here's another quick downside. I would say we are limited to 2 stereo aux channels or 4 mono aux channels. There's not more you can add. It may or may not be a hindrance to you, but it's something worth noting that other competitors maybe have more options when it comes to that, and you can basically do as many aux mixes as you want to do. Then we get even deeper down the mixer rabbit hole.
Tumbling down the rabbit hole.
And get to the routing or routing matrix. I'm no native English speaker, so I'm always confused as to how you say it.
I can't speak!
If you want to tell me, let me know down in the comments. Anyway, routing matrix is what I'm going to call it now. To break this down as simple as possible for beginners, what I can do in this routing matrix is take my analog inputs, for example. So an analog input would be this physical plug here. I can take whatever I plug into this input and take that signal and send it out to any of these analog outputs here, or to multiple at once. But not only can I send it from the analog inputs to the analog outputs, I can also say take the signal from microphone input 1, which is up here, so the analog input, and I can send it to one of 32 USB destinations.
Send it.
And these USB destinations I can access within the DAW. So I can say for my first track in the DAW, select track 7 of the USB inputs, and I can send whatever I want into track 7 from within the AudioFuse app. And at the same time, I can also use any of my digital outputs, which I can access in my DAW, to send audio to a specific USB audio output. And then I can take this USB audio output and route it to any destination, be it digital, USB, or any of my analog outputs. Anything you could think of that you want to do, send audio signals anywhere, you can basically do it with this.
That's a bit much.
Furthermore, we also have the aux mixes we talked about earlier. So if you set up a certain aux mix, remember we can send any of our mixer channels to the aux mix. So we now have an aux mix that contains a left and right channel if you are using a stereo aux mix, and you could now reinsert that anywhere. You could send that to a physical output if you want, or you can send this aux mix to, for example, USB inputs 1 and 2 right here. And that means now I have an aux mix that contains tracks from multiple inputs contained within USB inputs 1 and 2, which again is very useful if you are using something like OBS or Zoom and you want to combine a lot of signals and want the other person or the app to hear everything that's going on. And that's mainly what I'm using the aux channels for, because as I said, the loopback function isn't as great as I would like it to be.
I have standards.
This is so much stuff to go over, and I'm sure I didn't do an amazing job of showcasing how this is done, but there are better videos or tutorials out there that describe exactly how this is done. Nevertheless, the routing matrix allows you to create your perfect setup of sending audio to places and receiving it from places. And all these different setups that you are creating can also be saved as presets. So if you have certain standard configurations that you set up for yourself and you want to switch between them quickly, you can save a preset and load it, and then all your connections are made for you and you don't have to go in every time and click them back and forth. Then last tab here is the MIDI functionality, which again, I have not yet used myself.
I can't do everything myself.
But if you hook up a MIDI controller to the AudioFuse, like for example a Fader Fox controller, this becomes a fully fledged hardware mixer. So you can control all the channels and all the sends and everything via MIDI CC. That means you can use actual faders or knobs to control all the volumes in here, which is also super useful if you want to go that route. For me, I just didn't need it yet, but it is definitely cool that they've included it, and I think for many people this will be very interesting. You've got MIDI learn functionality to set this up as easily as possible, and yeah, pretty cool to have. Now that we talked about the routing matrix a little bit, let me talk about the loopback functionality. So when I started using this unit, one of the first things, as I said, because I want to use this for lessons and for filming videos, is using the loopback functionality so I can capture everything that I'm doing on 2 channels. However, there is no simple loopback channel on the routing matrix. So the loopback channel occupies channels 33 and 34, but they are not shown in the matrix. So you cannot easily access the loopback channels and send them back somewhere else, which is something I would expect to be able to do.
My expectations are high.
However, you will be able to access them from within the DAW environment. You would have to first go to, at least on Mac, to your audio and MIDI setup. And here you can now see we have channels 33 and 34 available that we don't have available in the AudioFuse control center itself, which is pretty strange to me. And in order to actually get anything into these channels, I would have to configure my speakers now and send my main audio from the computer to these loopback outputs. I'm not going to do this right now in order to not mess up my video and recording everything.
Don't mess with it.
But if you click this and make the loopback your main audio output, then you will actually receive a signal on this loopback input. However, again, within the routing matrix, you cannot send this anywhere, which is pretty strange because I would want to take this loopback signal and then send it to a specific digital USB destination so I can tap that from my DAW or whatever.
Tap, tap, tap.
All right, so now I'm in live and in my output configuration or input configuration. You will see that I have inputs 33 and 34 available to me. So this means in Ableton, I can actually now record these inputs, which is cool, which is something I would want to do. However, I still ask myself, why do I not have them available in the routing matrix in order to send them to any other input? It might not be necessary in every case, but still, I think it would be useful to have. Maybe it isn't possible for some weird reason, but I have a suspicion that other audio interfaces can do that. I've used a Motu previously, and I think it could do that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Not sure. Is this correct? Not sure.
This is, of course, a very specific use case to me. I'm aware of that. Otherwise, this is a highly complex interface and it can do a lot of things, as you've seen. So let me get to my conclusions. So to the conclusion, would I recommend this interface?
Hell yeah! Ha!
I would recommend this interface because it has so many ins and outs. You are ready for most use cases that you would have in a small to medium setup or even in a larger setup, depending on your subjective standpoint on that. I, however, think it can deal with most things that I throw at it. Of course, it is a pricey interface because there's so much in it. It definitely depends on what your needs are. Do you need all the inputs? Do you need all the outputs? Do you need all the routing and mixing capabilities that it has?
I need it too.
If you don't need that, you could probably buy a cheaper interface. However, there may come a time where you need all those functions, and then you're going to be glad that you invested a little more from the get-go and have an interface that you can do all these things with. And when it comes to negatives of the AudioFuse compared to its competitors, I think it's mainly about the app rather than about the interface itself and its inputs and outputs. So one thing I don't like about the app is that it is a dedicated standalone app, which means that the app needs to be up to date with your operating system, whereas some other interface companies like Motu, for example, have a web interface for some of their audio interfaces, which means you can access the audio interface directly from your browser without an intermediary app. And this means It doesn't need to be up to date with your operating system. That's something I really, really like. That also means you can access it no matter if you're using an iPad, iPhone, a Mac, or a PC. You just need to go on your browser and address the audio interface, and you got it within your browser and you can access all the functionality. At least that's how I am understanding it and how I experienced it when I used those interfaces in the past. So yeah, a standalone app having to be up to date with your operating system is a possibility for obsolescence, and that's what I don't like. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with naming the channels, you can name channels, yes, but wherever that channel within the app pops up, I would like it to have that name instead of a number on certain screens and a name on other screens. And the aux channels, you only have 2 stereo aux channels. Competitors allow you to create basically as many aux channels as possible. Again, this is not applicable to anyone if you will ever use these aux channels, but I think why not give you the option to create more aux channels if you want to. Again, these are just minor downsides. However, I thought I would mention them because I noticed them and it's something that I would want to know before I purchase. Overall, I gotta emphasize, I would recommend this interface to anyone wanting to build a larger project studio. Even for professional studios, I think the sound is excellent. You've got a lot of capabilities, and yeah, definitely great interface. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any further comments, any things you noticed about the AudioFuse that you think I missed out on, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope to see you in the next video. Until then, have a wonderful time.
Peace.